Hello everybody, you listen to J Movie Talk, episode 342, as I'll be talking about the movie Warrior. Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the pod. I am wrapping up sports movie month with episode 342, movie Warrior, and everything. Real quick, I do want to thank everyone who has been listening to this month movies where I started off with the movie Draft Day, starring Kevin Costner and Chadwick Boseman, and then follow that up with Bull Durham, where I had Moneymaker Chris and Chrissy on to talk about that movie and everything. And then, of course, last episode where I talked about White Men Can't Jump and everything. So here we are to close out the month with 2011's Warrior. This is a movie that I've kind of been wanting to do for a long time on the podcast, and finally got around to do it because I decided to do a sports movie month, and this was one of the movies to do it. And another reason why I threw this in here is because of the fact that the director Gavin O Connor, who is also the director of the Accountant movies, so that's another reason why I kind of put this in here to kind of coincide with the recent release of The Accountant 2, and just to kind of also maybe parallel a few things relating to this movie as well as The Accountant, especially Accountant 2, where you get more of the brother dynamic between Ben Affleck and John Bernthal characters in that movie, which, you know, we get some of this here as far as siblings and the whole family dynamic thing, which I will talk more about that when I talk a little bit more about Gavin O Connor. But yeah, Warrior. Like I said, 2011. I don't think I actually saw it in 2011. I think I didn't actually watch the movie to maybe either 2012 or even maybe around 2013. But it is definitely a movie that you don't have to really be a sports fan to really have any connection or anything to this movie. It's kind of how I feel about The Fighter also. It's like, yeah, that movie is about boxing and everything, but it's way more than just about boxing. It's about the whole family, dynamic and siblings and stuff like that, which is pretty much the same thing here, where you're dealing with two main characters and everything, and the whole family trauma and dynamics and like what they're literally fighting for. But before I go too far into this, I do want to real quick just kind of go through the cast and everything like that. So we have Tom Hardy as Tommy Reardon / Conlon. We have Nick Nolte as Paddy Conlon, Joel Edgerton as Brendan Conlon, Jennifer Morrison as Tess, Frank Grillo, and probably, now I could be wrong on this, but if as far as for me, as far as all the stuff that I've seen with Frank Grillo, this is probably the only movie where his character is like just a good guy. Now, The Purge Anarchy, he is a cop and he is quote unquote a good guy, but he's more like the Punisher in that freaking movie, and everything. And for anyone who says, well, Frank Castle, the Punisher, he's a good guy, that's kind of debatable. He might do good things, but is he really a good guy? But I will talk about that on a different podcast if I ever talk about the Punisher or whatever. But yeah, Frank Grillo in this movie, this might be like the only time where his character is like just a good dude, and that's kind of rare if you know anything about Frank Grillo in movies, or even just about Frank Grillo period, or whatever. We have Kevin Dunn as Principal Zito. We also have Denzel Whitaker shows up here as one of Brendan's students, which I might talk about that later as well. Like, yeah, it was cool kind of having, him having a cheering squad, but at the same time, it's like, was they really needed or necessary in the movie like that? Then also too, I will mention the fact that we have Kurt freaking Angle showing up as a Russian like super fighter. Basically he's like Drago in this damn movie or whatever. And everything. Those are like, the main cast of characters that I kind of want to spotlight before I actually go any further of talking about the movie. So going back to the whole thing about Brendan and Tommy, who, when you're watching the movie for the first time, you don't know that they're brothers until like almost a third away into the movie. Because of how it's played, that Tommy is just this, he has anger issues, and that Paddy, played by Nick Nolte, is his father. But then at the same time, you just got this whole thing going on with Brendan where, his family, he's about to be evicted from his house. He's trying to work out a deal with the bank to save his house and everything. And it's like, oh, ain't nothing that we can do for you, pal, type of thing. And he's a teacher. So you that side of what he has going on. But then you're thinking, oh, okay, well, clearly Paddy is Tommy's dad and, this, that, and the third. And then you find out, oh, wait a minute. Well, Paddy is also Brendan's dad. And it's like, well, that makes Brendan and Tommy brothers, right? And the fact that you really have two main leads, two protagonists, basically. And in a different movie, you could have literally just structured the story to focus on one of these characters. But with this movie, it does give a lot of focus to both. But at the same time, I do feel like in a way, it doesn't fully give as much as it possibly could have to a lot of the backstory about the families. I mean, we get some stuff in dialogue and everything, but it would make you wonder, okay, what exactly? I mean, we assume that Nick Nolte's character was just like this no good piece of shit dad and everything. We get that through the fact that Brendan doesn't want to have anything to do with him at all, and has pretty much moved because it for the most part they live in Pennsylvania, and from how it's talked about that Brendan lives in Philadelphia and Paddy is in Pittsburgh or whatever. And like I say, he was a trainer and everything. We know that Tommy was this exceptional wrestler back in high school and everything, and he was on a trajectory to be like probably what Kurt Angle character is considered in the movie, but because of reasons, and he ended up going and joining the military and things like that, that part of his life, his life really took a drastic change and everything. And the fact that Paddy is, this recovering alcoholic or whatever, and he's trying to do right. He's trying to be better than what he was, especially when Tommy shows up and everything. So we get a lot of that throughout the movie, like the family trauma stuff and, so about forgiveness. Paddy, he wants his sons to forgive him, and the brothers in a way want forgiveness from each other, but they want the other to also forgive. But the way they go about it is in a non-traditional of just coming out and saying it type way. It's just, what do you want from me type of deal, and everything, which I thought was very interesting, with how they play it up, because like I say, there's a lot said in the movie, but then there's also a lot that's not said as well when certain characters are in the presence of each other. And that's kind of a very rooted in reality type of thing where, you can just think about your, whatever your family dynamics are, or, issues that you might have had with family members. Sometimes things are said, sometimes things are not said. So, like I say, that's something that's very relatable when watching this movie and everything. So, I would say the three main characters to really talk about from this movie would be Tom Hardy's Tommy, Joel Edgerton, Brendan, and Nick Nolte as Paddy. So, real quick to kind of just talk about these three characters. So I will start with Joel Edgerton performance as Brendan, who he's just this regular dude. I mean, he if you did not know that he was a fighter or whatever, you wouldn't assume it, because he's a teacher. He's just a regular guy. He has a wife, he has kids, they have, real people problems and everything, and he is looking at getting back into fighting as, I mean, this is the last resort. Like, in a couple of months, they're gonna take my house, so either I do this or I'm gonna be out on the street eating beans, basically, type of situation. And the way Joel Edgerton plays the character, you do feel like, yeah, I mean, you feel for him. I mean, that scene with when he's at the bank trying to, see what the man at the bank can do for him, and it's like, oh well, we've exhausted all the resources of helping you out. There's nothing we can do, basically. And it's like, really? Like, I took your advice about stuff, and now you sitting here telling me there's nothing else that I can do. Like, all right, whatever. And then the fact that just to kind of get some money, he goes and does some, I won't say backyard, because it's not in the backyard, but I mean, it literally is. It's back of a strip club, really, where they got it set up, where they're doing like these, fights and everything. And because he's actually a trained fighter, so him being a trained fighter is still better than these dudes who just like, oh, I like UFC. Oh, I think I can fight. I can go in here and I can beat some dudes up until they end up fighting him. And it's like, wait a minute, no, it's not that simple, and everything. Cause like I always hear people say, it's like, yeah, there's a difference between real strength and gym strength. And I would rather be real strong than to actually be gym strong and everything. And a lot of people that Brendan fight basically are just gym strong, right? So like I say, the way he plays the character, it's very touching. You do feel, like I say, you do feel for him, and also the scenes between him and Jennifer Morris, who plays his wife, and everything, with them talking about like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and it's like, well, I thought we was gonna make this decision together, and it's just like, yeah, like I say, you feel it with his character in a lot of ways. Tommy, played by Tom Hardy, is a very interesting character and a very silent but strong performance by Tom Hardy. I mean, this is around the time when Hardy, was really kind of doing these type of characters, which is interesting because the movie that put him on the map basically was his performance in Inception, even though he had done Brunson and everything around that time. But a lot of people, I think, got real wind of who he was when watching Inception. I mean, with Leonardo DiCaprio, Christopher Nolan movie, it was a huge movie, and that was the movie that kind of got Hollywood's attention regarding him and whatever, right? But here he has a silent killer type of performance where it's like, you say the wrong thing to him and he would snap at you and probably murder you type of thing. But he's a man that's like, he's like the walking epitome of a haunted spirit. In a way, he's a tortured soul, because clearly Paddy was good and terrible to this when he was a kid. Like, just because you do in dialogue, you get this, you hear that, well, he was trained, his dad trained him from the age of 5. So right there, he's a child prodigy. But we're talking about Paddy back when he was this drunk, just he was drinking all the time. So he's probably very abusive as well. So you don't know what psychological problem that gave Tommy. And then we get the whole thing about, their mother who ended up dying and everything. I think said she died of cancer. So him having to experience and deal with that adds more trauma to it. And then he goes to the military, and who knows what he probably, was witness to in Afghanistan and everything. So that is like, it's trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma with him. And it's kind of a miracle that he didn't, kill himself, basically, with all the trauma that he's walking around and carrying, basically. But like I said, Tom Hardy is very good in this movie, and in certain ways you kind of feel like yeah, Tom is an asshole, but at the same time it's like he's been through so much, and it's like, because Tom Hardy is the actor that he is, you feel sympathy for him as well. And I will ask a question near the end of this episode regarding the two brothers and everything, because it's something that when I watch this movie it makes me think about, really. So I will talk about it on the podcast. And last but not least, Nick Nolte's performance as Paddy. And this movie actually is the movie that got him an Oscar nomination. And for anyone who has seen the movie and everything, everyone knows that his Oscar moment in this movie is that scene in the hotel after he had the fight in the casino with Tommy, and he falls off the wagon. And because there's this whole thing running through the movie where he listens to Moby Dick on tape and everything, and he's falling off the wagon, and he has the headphones on, and he's crying because he's listening to the tape, and he's talking about turn the ship around and everything. And Tommy comes in and he's looking at him, and he realizes that yeah, he did this, he drove him to this, and he doesn't say anything, but it's the first, in a way, he finally forgives his dad for all of the years that he was abusive to him, his brother, and probably also to their mother as well. And like I said, he says, again, it's one of those things I was talking about earlier where he doesn't say anything, but a lot is said with how he takes him and he cradles him, and it's like, yeah, that was their come to Jesus moment. And the fact that Paddy fell off the wagon because Tommy made him so, like, he really hurt him when he didn't really have to and everything. And especially with the fact that we're talking about Paddy in the current, where he was 1,000 days sober, and that was one of the things he wanted to let Brendan know when he went to see him and everything. And he was just living his life at that point. And the fact that Tommy came back into his life and wanted him to train him and all that type of stuff, but he didn't want to have no emotional attachment to him. It's like, you just gonna train me because that is something that you were good at. If everything else you sucked at, but at least you were a good trainer and everything, and I want you to train me, and that's all we're gonna do. You start talking about family stuff, we're done, type of thing. But Nick Nolte is so good in this freaking movie, and it showed like, no, Nick Nolte still had a lot left in the tank when it came to acting. And he did get nominated, like I said, for this movie for Best Supporting Actor, and rightfully so, because, like I say, it is an interesting performance by Nolte. Of course, Nolte was known for the 48 Hours movies, Cape Fear, North Dallas 40, movies like that. He was known for, but he was always a really good actor. And here, even though he's an older man at this point, but he still showed like, no, I can still do this and everything. Like I say, it's a very good performance. And again, is he a good person? Not necessarily, but he is trying to be better than what he was. And it just shows like, yeah, he's a human. And as he got older, and him finally being sober and off the wagon, I'm pretty sure he was living with the guilt of the fact that he's living in a house by himself. His one son is in the wind somewhere. He don't know exactly where he is. His other son left from Pittsburgh and moved to Philadelphia and said the only way to get in contact with me, you either call or you write a letter and send it through the post office, and you do not get to see your grandchildren or anything. So it's like, yeah, this man was really on some nonsense when he was younger, to where your kid literally moves across the state basically. And well, I won't say across the state, but just he moves to another city and everything, and says the only way you can contact me is if you call and if you write me a letter. It's like, damn, that's some cold shit, really, if you think about it. But yeah, and like I say, those three characters are pretty much the driving force behind this movie, and everything. So, now getting into talking more about the director, writer, Gavin O Connor. And one thing I've noticed, for one, I had to look up to see if I had seen any of his other movies besides The Accountants and this. And when I went through his filmography, I was like, I was more familiar with his work than I thought I was. Right? So going back real quick, just looking through his filmography, I mean, the movie that kind of got him notoriety goes all the way back to 1999, movie called Tumbleweeds, which I remember when that movie came out, which starred Janet McTeer, J.O. Sanders, Gavin O'Connor himself is in it as well. And that's a movie, dealing with family and things of that nature too. I've only seen like bits and pieces of the movie. I've never actually seen like the entire movie, but I remember like that was the movie that pretty much, put him on the map and everything as far as a filmmaker. And then after that, he does a movie called Murphy's Dozen, which I never seen or anything, but again, it's a movie that deals with family and everything. So if you notice, there's kind of a theme here. He does his first sports movie in 2004, Miracle, with Kurt Russell, and the whole Miracle on Ice thing. He directed that. 2008, he does Pride and Glory, the movie with Ed Norton and Colin Farrell, where again, you're dealing with some family things, but it's also cop stuff related as well. He does this he does Warrior, of course, in 2011, and then he does The Accountant 2016. He does The Way Back, another movie with Ben Affleck, in 2020, which is also a sports movie, a basketball movie at that. And then his most recent film is The Accountant 2. And like I say, looking back at his filmography and looking at, themes that kind of play out throughout his movie is the whole thing of like family dynamics and how they relate to each other. And also with this movie, in particular, is how the movie doesn't so much feel like a movie. It feels like you're getting a slice into these people's lives, because the way the camera moves and kind of sits like off at a weird angle it kind of makes you think about either like the mockumentary series like The Office, Parks and Rec, Abbott Elementary, Modern Family, those type of shows where it's like, yeah, the camera's there and you're not really supposed to acknowledge the camera that is there. It's almost like, okay, we're just following these people. And then also too, like Battlestar Galactica, like how the camera will always be like at this weird angles as if it was just peeking in and seeing what everybody was doing. That's how this movie kind of plays. So it gives that kind of realism to it, and especially in the fight scenes, you feel like you inside that freaking cage with them when we get to the whole fighting and everything like that. And I would say the perfect song, if there was a perfect song for a movie, it would probably have to be About Today, the song that's used in the finale. for this movie when we get to the big fight between the two brothers at the end, and just how the song is edited perfectly to what we're seeing on the screen. And it's not too often that you get a song that perfectly fits into a scene like this, as if the song is actually doing the talking for what the characters are thinking. That's something that you don't really get a lot in movies. And like I say, with everything that is built up over the course of the movie, when you finally get to that, and I say it's probably like one of the best scenes in not just in this movie, but in movie history, just because of the fact of how it's put together, how it's edited all together and everything. And I've always enjoyed watching this scene and how it plays out like that. Also too, the fight scenes in the movie, whether it's the backyard stuff with Brendan, or even the kind of gritty Rocky-ish stuff that Tommy does originally when he's when he's training at the gym and everything. And that's how he first get notoriety. He goes viral because he knocks out a dude that's actually ranked and everything. And then people start to find out exactly who he really was. And it's like, yeah, he wasn't just some random dude. Tommy Reardon, he was like a real fighter before, he ended up disappearing basically and then coming back. And also too, I like how the movie pretty much how it incorporates the MMA, because 2011 UFC is like a huge thing and everything. I mean, it's still huge now, but 2011 is like that era and everything is where people really was like locked into UFC, MMA. So anything related to that, I think it kind of amped up a lot of people about seeing this movie and just watching anything that was dealing with that particular sport genre and everything. And how, I mean, you still tell a really good story using, because this could have easily been about boxers. But because of the fact that they decided to use something that was popular and trending at the time, the way it was with the whole mixed martial arts thing. So it fit perfectly, but you could have easily substituted the MMA stuff and just made them boxers, and the story is still pretty much the same, because this clearly could have been a boxing story, especially the fact that they live in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. I mean, of course, you got Rocky, right? And there's even a reference to Tommy being like Rocky Balboa in a way, with how he trains and stuff like that. So a few big moments like that's throughout the course of this movie. Of course, as I mentioned, the whole Tommy gym knockout, where he fights to fight a Mad Dog. He actually wants to get in the ring and pretty much bully a bully. And because that's basically what it was. He witnessed Mad Dog basically going crazy on one of the guys that's supposed to be like a sparring partner with him. And so he's like, hey, I'll get in. If you need somebody to help out or whatever, I'll help out. And at first it's like, nah, man, this, that, and the third. It's like, come on now. So it's like, all right. So he gets in there and they start fighting and everything. And then they realize, wait a minute. No, he actually started beating the shit out of Mad Dog. And then he ends up knocking him out. And that's when people trying to figure out who the hell exactly is this dude or whatever. And then, of course, the whole thing with Brendan, who's basically the ultimate underdog. I mean, he kind of is like Rocky in the sense where he has it harder, really, than Tommy does once they get to the tournament. He pretty much got to go through the freaking gauntlet because nobody is even checking for him when they get to Las Vegas for the whole Sparta tournament thing. He's like, if it's 16 guys, he was ranked number 16 of that, and he literally had to go through like the murder row to get to the finals. But it adds more to the story, and the fact that the age-old thing, sometimes you got to go through hell to get to heaven. That's pretty much what happens with Brendan, and the fact that he was suspended from his job as a teacher because he trying to make some extra money. I mean, granted, he could have went, got a job, like at Home Depot or something like that. But the type of money that he needed to do this, because like the scene between him and Tess when they're talking about, him possibly doing this, is like, I made that in 2 hours, and that would have took me a month if I would have got that job being the bouncer in that strip club and everything. And she had this look on her face like, what? And it's like, yeah, like in 2 hours he made, I forgot exactly what the amount was, but still it would have took him a whole month to make that amount of money if he was working a regular job. So of course, like, yeah, I'm gonna do what I'm good at, to make this money a lot faster. And a lot of times that's the reason why, guys get into fighting. They feel that, okay, I'm good at it, I can make, really good money, opposed to working a regular job to how long it would take me to make that type of money. So you kind of understand it to a degree, especially in his case, because he needed it fairly quick and everything. But yeah, he gets suspended and all that stuff. And so it's like he had the biggest hurdles and obstacles to fight through in this movie. And then of course, as I mentioned earlier, the whole hotel relapse scene with Paddy, like I say, that is like one of the most touching scenes. I don't care how many times I watch it, it still touches me in a way, because Nick Nolte is just really good in that scene, and you feel like this man has really fallen off the wagon. Granted, I like the fact that they did not make it to where he just completely went off the rails. He just fell off the wagon for that night and everything because of the whole thing that happened with him and Tommy, and just how that plays out with him and Tommy. And like I say, the way Tommy just, he cradles his dad, and in his own way, I think in that moment he forgave his dad for all the crap that he put him throughout the years. And then of course that final, well, I wouldn't say I would say the last two fights with Brendan, because after he makes it to the semifinals, basically he has to fight Kurt Angle's Kobo, who's basically the Ivan Drago of this thing, and like he damn near gets murdered in there. And I do like the fact that they had Kurt Angle do like the German suplex where he literally tosses Brendan into the cage and all this type of stuff. It's like, yeah, you trying to murder this dude. But I mean, that fight scene is crazy and everything. And then, like I say, the final fight between Brendan and Tommy, that just, like I say, is the fact that they are brothers. They dealing with issues. They're both fighting for two different reasons. Because like I say, we know really why Tommy's fighting, but we find out like near towards the end why Tommy is doing this, which he wants to make this money so that he can help one of his best friend from when he was in the army, who died and everything, and he wants to send money to his widow and everything. And we get that through a couple of scenes in the movie and everything. And then when they find out that Tommy was a hero in the army, so then the armed forces become like, he becomes like, Mr. Stars and Stripes in a way and everything. And I did like the scene, like when he comes out, because he doesn't come out to any music. He's pretty much like Andre the Giant, had no damn music, right? But when they find out his military background, the fact that he was a hero and all this type of stuff, that the armed forces that show up to it, they start singing like one of their military songs and everything, and that becomes his entrance music. And they even mention in the movie like, oh, this is the first time that he actually acknowledges his fellow brothers and everything, which he does. He gives them a nod after they finish singing that song for him, which I thought was a nice touching moment as well. And then of course at the end where Tommy is he's like a caged animal, and even though Brendan breaks his arm, he's still trying to fight. And in that last sequence where Brendan gets him in a rear choke and everything, and he's telling him to tap out, and he's telling him like, I'm sorry. He's telling him to tap out at the same time, but he's telling him, I'm sorry. And then it's like, I love you, Tommy. And it's like, that's really what Tommy needed to hear, that he was, loved. Because even the scene early in the movie where they have the first first scene together in the movie on the beach and everything, and just how Tommy kind of brushes him off, like, I don't even know you and everything. And Brendan keep telling him, like, man, I couldn't stick around. Like, I had, she's my wife. Because Tommy kept, like, basically disrespecting Tess, like, oh, you just ran off with some girl. It's like, man, that ain't just some girl. That's my wife. Like, we have a family. Like, why you showing me a picture of people I don't even know and everything? And it's just like, damn, Tommy, you're a real asshole, man. But at the same time, you kind of understand it in a way. But that last, like I say, that whole I love you, Tommy, and the fact that Paddy is watching, and it's like, yeah, they pretty much, they reconcile through fighting, basically. Even though they basically beat the hell out of each other, but this is how it's done in their family, basically. Yeah, so like I say, this movie, even though it's a sports movie, but it's also a family drama movie too. So like I say, even if you are somebody who doesn't, care for the MMA stuff, or is even into sports like that, this is a movie that you can still watch and enjoy, just from the whole family dynamic part of it. And over the years, the movie has garnered, I almost want to say, like a cult following in a way, because no, it wasn't a huge movie when it came out. I think Tom Hardy probably got the biggest push from this movie, because I do feel like Joel Edgerton in a way is somewhat of an underrated actor, but this was like one of those movies that was continuously a stepping stone for Tom Hardy to reach, a certain level. Because again, this is a movie, because it's wild. He does this, Lawless, and The Dark Knight Rises, all relatively close to each other. So of course that's why he's bulked up the way he is, because he has to be Bane, right? And then even in Lawless, I mean, he's bulky, but they try to hide it as best as possible, because who in the hell in damn Prohibition time was built the way he was built? Like, wasn't nobody built like that. So of course they were trying to hide, but you could still see, like, no, he was swole as hell in Lawless and everything, which I always find funny, because of the fact that he was doing Bane. Because I think he put on 30 pounds for this, and then I think he put on another maybe 10, 20. So in total, like a 50 pounds he had to put on, just so he could be like to give the look that he gives his Bane, and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies, like, if you tell people to watch it and just say, like, forget it, even if you don't like MMA, just watch it. And I don't know too many people who has not watched this movie and say, oh, I didn't like it, or I don't think it's a good movie. I've never heard anybody say that. I'm pretty sure there are people out there who probably feel like that, but me personally, I have not heard anyone say that they do not like this movie, especially if I recommend it to them. They've never told me that they didn't like it. Now, whether they lying or not, I don't know, but they never tell me, oh, well, I didn't think that was good or anything like that. Because I feel like it's a good, solid movie, and everything. And sometimes, I mean, in a way, it's an underrated movie, because it's not a movie that gets talked about a lot. And like I said, the movie came out in 2011. Here we are, 2025. So that's a good 14 years ago that this movie came out. And like I say, if you bring it up, people are like, oh, yeah, that movie, and everything. But it's not one that gets talked about like a Rocky, like, A White Man Can't Jump, like, hell, not even Bull Durham to a degree, or anything. I'll probably put it more in the same category of like Draft Day. Like, it's a really good movie that probably was not seen at the time that it was released, but years later people probably catch on to it. So I would probably put it more like in the same league of Draft Day, in that sense of where it's an underrated and kind of slept on movie at the time, but over the years it's kind of garnered more traction and everything. And like I say, the way they blend the whole sports genre with the family drama aspect of everything, what more could you ask for? I mean, family drama and sports drama all intertwined in one, right? So I will close up with these last couple of things of where it's a very good character study about two men who basically are fighting for different reasons. Both are dealing with past traumas, family related, and everything, and just how their lives intertwine, but also are very different. But in the end, they reconcile their differences, and you would think that after everything that they are in a better place than what they were when they first, when the movie first starts, at least. So I've actually had a fun time talking about these four very different sports movies. Draft Day is a very interesting movie. I thought, and I still think it's one of Kevin Costner's better performances, and everything. And in a way, that movie also deals with family drama, especially the whole stuff with him and his mother, played by Ellen Burstyn, and everything, and just him trying to, I'm dealing with all this Draft Day stuff, but also to my relationship with Jennifer Garner is, it's a secret, but I finally decided I want to make this thing public, and the fact that she's pregnant also, and everything. And then with Bull Durham, you have this whole thing of people in minor league baseball that are, one guy is content with where he is, but at the same time, he wants better for himself, and he sees a better life with this woman who's like a baseball savant as far as helping younger players. And then of course you got Tim Robbins, who's just like this young goofy dude who's really talented, but his head isn't on straight. And the fact that the older guy has to pretty much like, let me help you out, kid, so you don't make the same mistakes that I made, and everything. And even though they are not a family in the traditional sense, they do have family dynamics as well. And then White Man Can't Jump. Sidney Dean character, he has the whole family aspect. I mean, he's doing all of that street hustling just so he can, get keep his business and provide for his family in a way. Whereas Billy is like just doing it just because he's a compulsive gambler who, and everything like that. And he loses everything in the end, which is kind of wild and ironic. And there's family dynamic with that as well. So in a weird way, these four movies all have like family aspect and family dynamics throughout them. And that was not the plan. It's just, I was literally just sitting here thinking back about these movies that I've done for this month. And just like in a weird way, even though they're four different sports movies, but they all have somewhat of similar themes as far as like, family and dealing with whatever issues, and they're very much reality based, as far as a lot of the issues that the main characters of these movies deal with. So as I said earlier, I had a question I was going to ask regarding this particular movie. And my question is, which of the two brothers, Brendan and Tommy, which of the two brothers do you feel should have won? Now, of course, in the movie, Brendan is the one who wins, and he gets the $5 million. So, of course, his family, don't have to worry about ending up on the street eating beans and all this type of nonsense, right? And I'm pretty sure he got his job back because his students, who pretty much, were his biggest support outside of the family, they actually did a fundraiser where they went to a drive-in and, broadcast the whole Sparta thing. And even Principal Zito shows up and, and everything. And it becomes like a community thing in support of Brendan, and everything like that. But like I say, because of the fact that both Brendan and Tommy are the main protagonists of this movie, and they're both fighting for valid reasons, right? my whole thing is, which brother do you feel should have won? Is it Brendan, even though he is the winner in the movie, but should he have won, or should Tommy have won? Because and mainly for what they're fighting for. And like I say, there is no wrong answer, but I'm just curious to see what people think. Me personally, I have no problem with the fact that Brendan won and everything, but I do think it would have been a little different if Tommy would have won, because then it's like, okay, well, what happens with Brendan family after this, right? But yeah, I'm just curious, like, who do you think should have won, and did the right brother win, and everything. Also, what are some of your favorite moments from the movie, and what's your favorite sports movie in general? Of course, you can email me at jmovietalk@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on my personal page, the J Giles, over on Twitter, or the movie page also over on Twitter as well, J Movie Talk. You can hit me up there, and also Instagram at JMT Podcast. Let me know, what do you think? Which brother do you think should have won, and did the right brother win? What are some of your favorite moments from the movie? And what is your favorite sports movie? So I want to thank everyone for listening, not only to this episode, but listening to all the sports movie month. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. I will be back in July for episode 343, where I am going to talk about a very polarizing and somewhat controversial director. I'm going to talk about his entire career and everything. And I'm talking about the one and only Mr. Spike Lee. Yes, I'm going to be talking about Spike Lee and just do like a recap and overall talk about his entire career. And there might be some controversial things that I might say about Spike Lee and everything like that. So yes, that is how I'm going to kick off July. Now, the rest of July is going to be a little different. I will talk more about what else I have planned for July at the end of that episode, of the Spike Lee episode. I will talk more about what July I have in store, because it's not going to be a full theme month like I've done the last couple of months, and everything is going to be a little different. But yeah, that it will be the next episode, me talking about Spike Lee's career. Especially with the fact that his newest movie is coming out later this year, Highest to Lowest. But I wanted to do this in the summertime because it's hot, and like I say, he is a hot topic in a lot of ways. So that's one reason why I wanted to do this. So yeah. So again, thank you guys for listening, and I will be back to kick off July talking about the one and only Mr. Spike Lee. Until next time, peace.